Get the lowest prices of the season during the Mattress Warehouse Labor Day sale. Save up to 70% on best-selling mattresses. Plus, get a free adjustable base with select Sealy purchases. Visit mattresswarehouse.com today. Get the lowest prices of the season during the Mattress Warehouse Labor Day sale going on now. Save up to 70% on best-selling mattresses. Plus, get a free adjustable base with select Sealy mattress purchases. Enjoy 0% interest financing, free delivery, and our lifetime price guarantee so you can shop with confidence. Don't miss these incredible Labor Day savings. Visit mattresswarehouse.com today for details and to find the Mattress Warehouse store nearest you.
From the front lines of the mom wars, here's Bethany Mandel and Kara Kennedy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast. I am your handy dandy co-host, Bethany Mandel. I am going to be joined next episode by my regular co-host, Kara Kennedy, who's going to tell us the horrible saga of her trip to England and back. Wow, it sounded terrible. And you guys, maybe we should all do a GoFundMe for a new suitcase or maybe an airplane for her so she can fly private from now on. But in the meantime, I am joined by Alleigh Marre, right? That's how you say it?
Yep.
The executive director of the American Parents Coalition. So I hosted Kevin McCullough's show, That Kevin Show, last week. And you and I talked and I was like, I need more than the 8 minutes allotted. It was not nearly enough. And so I'm so glad that you came on the podcast, because for folks that didn't hear that radio show, the TLDR is I'm a member of the YMCA. I love the YMCA, but I'm a little nervous about it now. So I usually go with my kids and I get changed in the family bathroom because I have little boys, I have little girls. It's just easier to go in the family bathroom. So can you tell my listeners, what is going on at the YMCA? Because I was shocked. I followed all of this stuff really carefully. I'm a YMCA member, and you opened my eyes to it.
Yeah. So at many YMCAs across the country, for both their changing facilities, their in-house sports leagues, and then also this also extends to their camps and their overnight accommodations. We're seeing that they've completely blurred the lines between boys and girls, male and female. And so a lot of their policies are reflective of, quote, gender identity versus sex. So males have access to female bathrooms. And to the point you brought up earlier, the YMCA is traditionally a very family-friendly focused gym. This isn't, Planet Fitness or Gold's Gym where you have adults. Not that it really matters for the sake of the fight, but it's a totally different level when you're talking about kids as young as toddlers in the locker room with their parents changing into swimsuits. It's just a whole new level of safety concerns, privacy violations when you're dealing with kids that young. So we first started our investigation into this last year, where we were focused a little bit more on the locker room side of it. And then this summer we did a second iteration where we dug a little bit deeper into the camps and some of the policies surrounding the camps because of their overnight accommodations.
So this kind of stuff is so important to me because I had a phone conversation with a girlfriend about a month ago, and she called me in a panic because her son was getting on a plane the next day to go to a sleepaway camp, and she found out that they had this gender affirming policy in the camp. And she was like, I didn't even know. I don't know what to do. And it's so important to have an organization that is doing this digging that parents don't have the time to do. People don't have the time to investigate this. And this is something, her kid ended up in a bunk, her son ended up in a bunk with a young woman. And he was not comfortable. And she's never sending to this camp again. But perhaps it's tough to have this conversation in the middle of August now. But parents need to be aware that this is not only, what a lot of camps opt into, but there's a lot of camps in this country where they're mandated by state law to go by gender identity. And this is the case across the country in summer camps. And to me, it's just wild because I think it opens up a whole web of liability if a girl gets raped in her bunk.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's also, of course, even on a much different scale, just discrimination writ large. you explained with your friend, I mean, that child doesn't want to go back to that camp ever again.
Yeah.
And that puts the burden of discrimination on that individual, not the person that they're allegedly trying to be, quote, inclusive toward. And so there are just so many lines that get blurred and boundaries that get blurred when you're having these types of policies. One thing that's particularly important, I think, for parents to understand is, unfortunately, no organization is really safe. Like the YMCA to me is the perfect example, because I grew up probably our county's top patron of the YMCA. I credit it for like my ability to be able to go and play college sports. I was at the Y every single day after school for 2 or 3 hours playing basketball. And I, from that, trusted the Y. The same way when you go off to college and you're buying laundry detergent, you're probably going to get, whatever you were used to smelling at home. And so that trust transfers, and you don't necessarily think to start over and do that investigation all over again when you start making the decisions on where to send your own kids. And one of the things that our organization tries to point out, we have it's called a lookout, and it's not quite a newsletter because it's not on a regular schedule. We try not to spam our members' inboxes. It's when we think something's important, we will let you know, and otherwise you won't hear from us. So we send this out to try and remind parents that the why being a perfect example, it's like, hey, literally everything you do, you have to research it, unfortunately, as if it's brand new. Everything from TV shows to summer camps to gyms. And so we try and really sound the alarm on that.
So I know that there's been controversies at other gyms with relation to this issue. And so do you off the top of your head know the other gyms who have this policy? Is it gold?
It does vary based on state. Okay. Planet Fitness is definitely one of them where we've seen a lot of examples, especially in California. And then one thing that is different, again, about the Y versus some of these other gyms is the federal funding portion of it. Because the Y receives so much money in federal funding, there's actually an enforcement mechanism different than like the Bud Light saga, for example. Now that like people really voted with their dollar and they stopped buying it. And that was a really great case study in being able to see like what the conservative purchase power is, or just, I guess, in this case, the rational purchase power. But with the Y, there's even greater ability to effect change because they are federally funded. And when you receive federal funding, you're required to comply with federal anti-discrimination laws, being Title IX. And so when the Y has erased these policies for sex-based spaces and instead subbed that out with gender identity-based spaces, they're not complying. So between the president's executive order, his first or second week, saying we're not going to fund anything that supports gender identity, and then also just Title IX more broadly, the Y stands to lose a substantial amount of money. And that's different than the Planet Fitness, the Gold Gyms, these private corporations that are much more reliant on the market speaking. This is something where it's twofold.
So would this involve like having plaintiffs in a lawsuit, or could this just straight go to the Trump administration? Like, I'm a little confused about the legality of it.
It could be either. If there were an individual who wanted to take it to court, it could go that direction, but also it could come straight from the administration. They could review their grants and federal funding based on compliance or lack of with Title IX, and they could just make the decision to remove the funding. The same way we saw them do that or threaten that, for example, up in Maine when they were having the conversation about I believe it was track, but the male track athletes competing against the girls, and the president and Janet Mills, the governor there, were going at it. And he said, I'm going to remove your funding. But this is actually a little bit cleaner because they're a nonprofit organization instead of a public school institution. But it would be a similar principle that could apply there.
Obviously there's the safety concern of the bathrooms and the sleepaway camps for sure. I think that's in one bucket. That to me is like way more emergent. But is there a second bucket of competition between boys and girls who are competing at the Y? Is that also a concern?
It is. To your point, it tends to get less attention, and because you see that a little bit more clearly, and parents can kind of make that decision in real time. They're sitting on the sideline. What the heck is this? So it gets a little bit less of the bigger attention. But yeah, some of the states that have the state-based protections for gender identity, like New York State that now has that written into their state constitution.
Yeah.
Places like that, the YMCA is trying to use that as cover to say, well, we're just complying with state law.
Right.
Even though that, that's a too cute
Yeah.
by half explanation.
So have you heard any stories about, things happening in bathrooms at YMCAs or on sports leagues, or is this all sort of preemptive?
We've spoken to a handful of families in Washington state where they've had, the firsthand experience with this. And then a lot of it is also compiled from reporting, which I think is important because you kind of see these little pieces reported ad hoc here and there
Right.
across the country. And then organizations such as ours can pull all that together and say like, hey, this is not an isolated incident. It's also not necessarily isolated to the quote blue state places that you would think. It's happening everywhere. These are the excuses, that are being used. But yes, we have spoken to, there was a woman in Washington state who used to work at the Y, and she brought this forward, and she was actually fired from her position because she brought it up within their staff meeting and said like, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. And they fired her. Very similarly to another woman in Washington state. And this one was very widely reported, who it was an older woman. I think she was in her 80s. And she came out of the restroom and said that there was a man changing his clothes and watching two teenage girls change their clothes. And the front desk told her that he was trans and had every right to be there. And they revoked her membership. She got her membership from the Y cut because she came to the front desk concerned for those little girls, young girls' safety.
Oh my God. So This is the thing. I will repeat this until I'm blue in the face. When I was promoting my book, Stolen Youth, this was something that deeply, deeply bothered me because as women, we are born with this like very innate evolutionary alarm system that when something tells us that we're in danger, you need to listen to that internal alarm. And I spoke to a mom, and it was actually related to this. I was at a summer camp, and there was a man in her bunk, and she was afraid to say something because a month or two earlier, she had said something wrong. And like, I'm using very heavy quotation marks there about something related to gender identity. And she was president of her class at school, and she was removed from that position because she was in the wrong about something in gender identity.
Wow.
And so that summer she went to camp, and there was a male counselor who, this is insane that first of all, we're telling girls to silence their internal alarms, but we're also doing it to ourselves as adults. The way that she described this man, he had half of his head shaved. The other half of his hair was blue. His teeth were rotting out of his mouth. And he's in charge in the bunk itself of 12 and 13-year-old girls.
Man.
Oh my God. And so this girl was scared, and all the girls would have a buddy system so that they would never be alone with him. And she didn't sleep for the 4 days that she was at this sleepaway camp. Thank God it wasn't like a month-long camp.
Yeah.
And she silenced her internal alarm that under normal circumstances, she would have marched herself down to the office and said, call my mom. I feel scared. And she was taught by her school, you shut up or there are dire consequences when it comes to gender stuff. And like, this is never something that's going to be quantifiable. Like how many girls are going to be raped? How many girls are going to be killed? Because we're raising an entire generation of girls to silence that internal alarm. And the consequences of this are immeasurable.
You're spot on. And it's also the complete opposite of what we were told when it was convenient in 2014, 15, 16 of the believe all women.
Yep.
At that time, it was, apropos to be all believe all women, and every single thing that's said, whether or not it can be validated, is the truth. And then at the same time, now shove that all down because you don't want to offend anybody and say the wrong thing. Another group of girls that I think really gets the short end of the stick here, when you're looking at the athletes themselves, we spend a lot of time talking about the women on the podium, as we should. They have worked their butts off to get there, and they are losing spots all the time. But what I think often gets overlooked is actually the girls who may benefit the most from sports writ large, which are those girls in middle school who are like right on the cusp, about to get cut. And then you get these boys on the team who take their spots. And so you have these girls who, maybe aren't that great athletes, or, they're the 12th man and they just barely made the team. But those are the girls who will benefit the most from the friendships, the camaraderie, the mentorship from the coach. That may help them get in better shape and give them like a huge boost of self-confidence at 11 and 12, when your confidence is just shot by puberty and everything else that's going on socially and trying to find your place. And we have just completely neutered that instinct. Yeah. And those girls will never go on. And you see the statistics all the time of, I think it's 94% of women in C-suite roles played sports. So the impact of sports is so much bigger than whether or not you go on to play professionally or even in college. It's what gives you that drive and that understanding of competition in a place where it's safe to explore that and to, build those relationships with your teammates that these girls will now never get. Because if you squish that at 12 years old, they're not going to try out again in 8th grade.
No.
Does the Constitution require a unitary executive in control of all things apportioned to the executive branch? John Yoo says yes.
The Constitution grants all executive power in the federal government to the president. One of those duties that the president also has is to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. He's the only official in the Constitution who is given that responsibility.
George Will says no.
It seems to me the unitary executive theory scratches what I would call humanity's Rosetta Stone itch. That is the desire to find something that decodes everything and answers all questions.
The unitary executive theory, coming up on Conservative Crossroads.
Ricochet. Join the conversation.
If you're looking for fun for the whole family, you need to be at Island Green, Westminster. Trust me, there's something for everyone. Great food, fresh air, memories under the palm trees. Children can enjoy mini golf, cornhole, or hit the range. Adults can unwind with cold drinks, live music, and beautiful views. There is something on the menu for everybody. Burgers, wings, and I have to tell you, the best crab cake in Maryland. Take it from me, there is something you will enjoy in Island Green, Westminster.
Booking a Vrbo vacation rental means you get Vrbo Care and 24/7 life support, verified reviews from real guests, and top-rated homes with the Love by Guest filter.
I just booked my Vrbo because there was a sweet wine fridge.
We all have our reasons. If you know, you Vrbo. Terms apply. See Vrbo.com/trust for details.
One of my favorite anecdotes, sort of along these lines of like when you do pit a man and a woman or a girl and a boy against each other, was the Olympic winning women's soccer team led by Megan Rapinoe.
Yeah.
And she defends, trans. Yeah. Meanwhile, 5 years ago, I think, the Olympic team competed against a JV boys team in Dallas. I'm almost certain it was Dallas. And the boys beat the Olympic girl team 5-2. A JV boys team beat the Olympian girls. And to me, it's just like when Megan goes on The View, which she did like a week or two ago, and like, it's so ridiculous. I'm like, you were beat by a bunch of preteen boys, maybe 14. I don't know, but they certainly weren't 17, 18. And for you to stand up there, part of me wonders when it comes to someone like Megan Rapinoe, like, do you just want to close the door behind you? You want to be the last female successful sports player and you want no one to come behind you, because that's essentially what she's advocating.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, similar experience. I played basketball in college, and we would practice against a practice squad of boys who were not on the men's basketball team, would have never made it, but they were, athletic 18, 19, 20-year-old boys who would like crush us if
Yeah.
if they were actually a team. And it was, that there are biological differences which all of a sudden are completely out the window.
In this
And
house, we believe in science.
right, right. We trust the experts.
Yeah, like what are these people like? That's
Yeah.
the thing that kills me is like it's the same people that say in this house we believe in science,
Yeah.
except we don't believe in genetics or biology or anatomy. Like all of those sciences we don't believe in. But, and this is actually a good segue, they do believe in climate science.
Yeah. Yeah. We've actually done a handful of reports recently on groups such as Our Children's Trust, who have injected all of this climate hysteria into curriculum in classrooms. And we've actually been able to see it drawn out. There was a survey when Kamala Harris was running for president against President Trump, and she cited this in, I believe it was one of the debates, where she said one of the number one causes of the birth recession that we're seeing now is people are blaming it on climate change. Yeah. And that is a direct result of what we are teaching the Gen Z and those coming up behind them about the fear for what we're, quote, doing to the planet. And they have this group specifically, Our Children's Trust, has even gone so far as to sign on minors, child plaintiffs, to lawsuits against counties, towns, governments for their practices to try and interject kids into this and like use them for their own political purposes. And these are things that are happening in public schools. Mm-hmm. It's being taught, and they're recruiting kids out of the public school system to sign on as plaintiffs. It's insane.
I wrote about this in Stolen Youth also, the climate hysteria and the anxiety that it's breeding in kids. Yeah. And so before we started recording, I told you about my day today. We went to the Museum of the Bible and we went to the Air and Space Museum. Yesterday, we went to the aquarium, and that's why my 3-year-old was so tired today. And we walked up to one of the exhibits, and there was a young woman there talking to my kids. And we homeschool, and so like any of the climate hysteria books get pulled out of the box sets. Like I really do take a lot of care to not inform my children that the world is ending, because I don't think that it is ending. I think that we're going to be just fine. But the ubiquity of this messaging is unavoidable. And so at the aquarium, this woman starts telling my kids about how the animal that they're standing in front of is going extinct, and how they should contact their representatives about anti-poaching laws. And I was like, okay, thank you so much. We're going to move on now. Bye-bye. And it's so frustrating as a parent, because like I have to pull the books out of the box sets. I have to pre-screen anything that is science and weather related. At museums and zoos, all of the placards, like a third of the placards in some of these museums are about climate change. And yesterday, it was a new experience. I was like, now someone's standing there talking to my children about this. Like, it's just unavoidable, and it comes from all ends. And like my oldest daughter is almost 13, and she jokes about it. She's like, "Oh, Mom, if I don't refill my water bottle, all the penguins are gonna die." And I'm like, I'm glad that you think this is funny, but like for a lot of kids, this is terrifying stuff.
Yep, absolutely. I remember when we were looking for someone to help us with childcare, and I had asked her, if she, clearly she likes kids. She wants to babysit. And we had asked her, are you interested in having kids of your own someday? Now, I have 4. And she goes, yes, but I think probably only 1 or 2, because otherwise it's bad for the environment. I'm like, first of all, read your audience. But second of all, she said it with pure intention and a complete straight face. And it just really hit me that that is what this generation absolutely believes. And, if we don't reverse course on that, our population is going to go downhill real fast.
This was the whole premise of a book that came out in the 70s and 80s. It was called The Population Bomb. And it was like a 1968 best-selling book by a biologist, Paul Ehrlich. And he predicted that rapid global population would lead to like worldwide famines and societal collapse. And people had fewer kids as a result in the late 60s and early 1970s. And there was an incredible, very, very, very short letter that appeared years and years ago in the Wall Street Journal. It was a man who said, I didn't have children because I believed him. And
Oh, wow.
it destroyed my life. Like
Oh,
all my friends are grandparents now, and it's just he ruined my life.
that's awful.
Yeah. And I think that there's an entire generation of kids who don't want to have children. And they, unfortunately, I think it's a self-perpetuating cycle of, fewer and fewer people are having children. And so I didn't really grow up around kids. I'm an only child. I didn't think I wanted to have kids until my cousin had kids. And then I was like, oh, those are actually kind of nice and like
Yeah.
smell good and they're cute. Maybe.
Yeah.
But when you don't grow up around kids and you don't have, the familiarity, and I think that that's going to happen on like a global population
Yeah.
scale of, well, these kids are going to be scared and they're not going to have the like white pill, I guess, experience of being around
Mhm.
kids. And as a result, like I think we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg on the population collapse.
Yeah. Well, and also for us, there was the whole beginning of the girl boss movement of get your education, establish your career before you even think about getting married and having kids. And so many of us, myself included, I bought into that, had kids later. I didn't have my first until I was 30, 20. Nope. I had just turned 30 when she was born. And
That's still young by these standards, honestly.
yeah. But my husband and I joke all the time, like, we've got four, and how many more would we have had if we started at 24, 25?
Yeah.
And so if you couple that with then what we're seeing with climate hysteria, sterilization from this gender identity stuff, medicalizing kids starting at 3, 4, and 5 years old, those three things combined are going to have, and to your point already are, having a significant effect on just from the population perspective, the future of this country.
And it's so funny because if I, as a conservative person who talks about, parenting and everything, if I came out and said, I think that everyone with mental health issues should be sterilized against their will and unknowingly. Can you imagine the bomb that would go off in like pop culture?
Yeah.
Oh, this conservative woman wants to sterilize. I'm like, but that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You by subjecting all of these people to gender identity affirming treatments, you are sterilizing children who are gay and who have mental health issues. And often it's like a combination of gay, mental health, and autism, those three things.
Yeah.
You are sterilizing. And if I, as a conservative, said, I think that we should forcibly sterilize those three populations, that would be unfathomable, the level of nuclear bomb that would go off. But they're doing it, and they're doing it unapologetically. And me as a conservative, I'm sitting over here, I'm like, y'all, this is like unbelievable levels of malpractice. And they just like, I mean, I think one day there will be a reckoning. And unfortunately, it's going to come at the hands of these kids.
Yeah, there absolutely will be. It's also so important, and this is more just a broader thing to think about for your audience, that we don't shy away from these conversations with friends who may feel differently than us, because I use this one example with my friend, could not be more unaligned politically. I mean, she's about as far left as they come, and I am not. And we don't agree on much in that lane, except for that we both love our kids. We lived on the same street, and we're part of a mom's group together. And she came to our normal meetup this one night, and she was like, I cannot believe I had my son at preschool today and they gave him Tylenol because he had a fever, and they had called me and left a message to see if I wanted to or not. I didn't get back to them, and they gave him Tylenol, and I could not believe they gave him something without telling me about it. And I was like, you know what, Haley? You're right. So glad you said that. You are right, because no one should ever be providing medical advice or
treatment,
actually a treatment, without you being not only involved, but consenting to that.
Yep.
And so when we have these conversations with our peers and our friends as people, and don't look at it politically, and let these examples in real life kind of, be the catalyst for that, I think you can be surprised how much more common ground there actually is when you take the jersey off and just have those conversations.
And I think that they don't realize, like, in theory, gender affirming sounds really nice, right? Like,
Yeah.
and if my kid, one of my six, decide like they would not find a supportive parent.
Yeah.
They decided they were the wrong gender. And so a lot of these people see these issues and they're like, well, we're just affirming their identity, even in the wake of like bigoted parents. But the reality is, if my child has decided they are a different gender, it's because there's something going on that
Yeah.
I need to be aware of. The number of stories, because I wrote a book about this, I hear them. People send me messages all the time. The number of stories where they were secretly affirmed at a school, or
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost always a school. And then the kid ends up suicidal, and the parents never
No
had
idea.
they had no idea that there was something
Yeah.
like catastrophically wrong emotionally with their child until it was like at the too late point.
Yeah.
And when you withhold that information from a parent, the parent is going to be the one that's paying the funeral home when
Yeah.
the kid commits suicide. And all of these affirming people, they're out the window. The second it hits the fan, they're out the window. And it's the parents who have to pick up the pieces. And it's a lot easier to pick up the pieces when they're big. But when you shatter it and there's
Yeah.
tiny, tiny shards everywhere, this is the consequence of withholding that information. And when you kind of explain that to people, like, it's gender identity confusion never happens in a vacuum. It's not just
Mhm.
that one thing. It comes with bipolar, it comes with depression, it comes with anxiety. Like, parents need to have a full picture, and you certainly should not be including hormones into this
Yeah.
very volatile situation, and physical mutilation into this very volatile situation. And that's what's going on. And it's when people understand that it's not just like gender affirming and everyone's nice and accepting. Like, it's not nice, it's not accepting, it's quite the opposite. And when people get past the nice little like label that they put on gender affirming and they understand what it actually is and what it could be repressing, then they're like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm like, yeah. And it's the
Yeah.
Tylenol example.
And it's also quite obviously the complete opposite of gender affirming. Because, like obviously, if
Yeah.
you were affirming the child's gender, you would be giving estrogen to a girl and helping them deal, which is why the medical consensus was, and is now coming back to, at least in Europe, go through puberty first.
Yep.
And, it's an insane thing.
Hi, I'm Ben Sass.
And I'm Chris Direwalt.
And this is Not Dead Yet. We're all dying, but some of us have been brought face to face with that reality.
However long each of us have to do it, though, we all want to live a good life.
One with meaning, love, and joy. And our guests are here to help us do exactly that.
Now available for download and streaming at ricochet.com.
Ricochet. Join the conversation.
Meanwhile, at MGM National Harbor, it all started with the perfect dinner at Voltaggio Brothers Steakhouse. Go ahead, dig into the celebrity chef menu. Then cue the legendary soundtrack at the theater with your favorite artist. The odds look good tonight when you step into the action of buzzing slots and thrilling table games. Find your escape at MGM National Harbor, where bold excitement meets unparalleled luxury. Plan your next visit at mgmnationalharbor.com. Must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
So I think the most eye-opening thing for people is when they see the stories themselves of like, okay, let's see this through to the logical conclusion. I think the most famous example is Jazz Jennings, the young boy was put through all of the gender everything.
Yeah.
And he had his penis removed. He was put on hormones, all these things. And he was literally the poster child for this. He had a show
Books,
on
shows.
Yeah. Magazines, whatever. And now you look at what he is now, and it's so sad. First of all, like the descriptions that I've heard of what this surgery did to him physically I can't even verbalize it. Like, people should go and Google like what his entire situation is now. It's life-threatening. It's incredibly it's life. Let me explain that part. It's life-threatening because it's an open wound. They've created an open wound to mimic a female anatomy, and an open wound is susceptible to infection. And so this young man will certainly die of an infection at some point in his life that was completely preventable and caused by this gender affirming surgery. He's in an incredible amount of pain, mutilated beyond, like, it's disgusting. And mentally and emotionally, he is dealing with severe depression, severe anxiety, in large part probably because of everything that's been done to him. He's gained a significant amount of weight because of all the depression. Like, it's spiraled into a perfect storm, and it's all at the hands of his parents. Like, his parents have destroyed his life and ripped apart his future. And what, they got like a show on a network on it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, that if that's the poster child, like, let him keep talking forever about what his life is like, because that is so instructive of what what the end game of this ideology is.
We also did a report recently on the American Academy of Pediatrics and some of the guidance that they give, obviously, on both, quote, gender affirming care, but also like reproductive health. And this may or may not come as a surprise to some, but they actually counsel their providers to tell their patients that in conversations they have in their office, that none of what's shared will be shared with their parents, and also that they will write prescriptions for things like birth control, whatever, again, without talking to the parents, to provide this, quote, safe space for these kids to share. And they even have training videos on their website where they're role playing this, and they show this teen sitting at the table who identifies, I may butcher this, but as like a demi boy, something or other. And the provider then walks him or her through whatever's going on and assures them they're not going to share any of this with their parents. So we actually have a resource coming out in the next couple of days for you to be able to walk through these types of questions with your own pediatrician and make sure that they're not going to be counseling your child on this.
Here's my follow-up question. My oldest is almost 13. Do I have to walk out of the room? Because I have no intention of doing so.
You don't have to.
No, right?
Yeah.
You try to make me walk out of the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
They handed her once a form pretty recently at like one of her more recent well visits, and my friend Abigail Schreier wrote this incredible book, Bad Therapy, and I'm not just saying this because she's my friend, and I feel very lucky that I can call her that, because I feel like I got in on the ground floor of Abigail Schreier before she was Abigail Schreier. But she wrote Bad Therapy, and she wrote about her son went to urgent care for like an upset stomach or something, and the bonkers questionnaire they gave him terrified her, and it introduces thoughts in your brain that didn't always exist. And so I was thinking of that, and they handed her the form directly, and I like yanked it as they were handing it in the air, and I was like, I'll take that. And I looked at it, and it was all these questions. Do you think about killing yourself? Do you think about self-harm? And I was like, she will not be filling this out. And it felt like it was my first test in a medical setting with an older child. And I was like very proud of myself that I've won the test. But I've been thinking for the last year, like, they're going to tell me to leave probably at her 13-year-old appointment. No, not doing. And I trust her. Like, she will come out, and like, the only thing I don't trust her about is she'll come out and be like, they asked really dumb questions. And she'll say that like in earshot.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have a friend who, she did leave the room at Walter Reed, which is the military hospital. And she ended up talking to National Review, and it was a whole story because they were asking at Walter Reed, who do you want to have sex with, to her 14-year-old son, who's an Orthodox Jew. And he was like, what?
Yeah.
What? And they were like, they pushed him. Like, do you want to have sex with a man? Do you want to have sex with a woman? And he's like, I just want to play basketball.
Yeah. I'm here for my sports physical.
Yeah. But this is like, it's wild to me that professionals do this, because that talking to children behind their parents' back about sexual stuff and instructing them to keep it secret from their parents is like, I'm not accusing them of grooming children for sexual abuse, but you are priming something.
Yes.
Priming someone for sexual abuse for this child, because you're normalizing the idea that an adult can talk to a child about sex secretly and tell them not to tell their parents. There's no limiting principle once you introduce that as a person in authority.
For sure. And you're also, I think we're going to hopefully see at some point soon the same opening in the medical community that we're seeing via the WNBA with Sophie Cunningham. Yeah. Because I think as soon as one physician has the balls to come forward and say, we should not be doing this, then we'll get a handful of others who follow. But until that happens, I mean, we're just going to continue to see more of this, because I do think it is coming at an institutional level rather than the provider level. You have groups like the AAP who are pushing this down onto their members, and this is part of what we have to say and what we're going to do. And in fact, the AAP at their annual board meeting, they voted 95% to affirm gender affirming care as their number one priority for the coming year. I mean, they have bought this into this hook, line, and sinker, which makes me think that there has to be some sort of underlying financial motive here, because when you step back and look at it, who stands to benefit the most from having these patients for life? It's the medical community, pharma, exactly. These hospital systems, insurance companies. And this is another place where I really try and pull my liberal friends in, because it used to be, the sexy thing for the liberals to hate on the pharma companies, like, oh, pharma this, pharma that. And I'm like, remember how much you hated them? Here's another example of why we hate them.
Yeah. Honestly, it reminds me of the painkillers. My father was a drug addict, and he was prescribed opioids. Yeah. And he was told, you can't get hooked on this. And I was a teenager, and I was like, Daddy, that doesn't make sense. This is an opioid. Of course you could get addicted because you've already been addicted. And fast forward, he became addicted and he ended up committing suicide. And it's all connected. And it's like, how many times do you have to lie? It's that famous saying, like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I don't believe you. And today we're taping this on Monday, August 10th. It will come out probably in a couple days. We learned today that Anthony Fauci and Walensky were lying about the fact that the COVID shot caused miscarriages in 82% of women who were pregnant in their first trimester. That's an abortion.
Yeah. That one hits me so close to home, because at that time I was pregnant with my second.
Me too.
And they were pressuring me, like, you need to get this, you need to get this. And I was like, I'll do it once he's here. Like, I'll do it once he's here. Let me just get through the birth. And, they were still testing everybody at that time anyway. Yeah. Like, I had to give birth in a mask, but anyway, it just, these women had no idea.
Yep.
Their doctors are telling them.
I was pregnant with my fifth, and I knew a lot of women who had miscarriages in their first trimester, because 2 days after they got the shot, a lot of women. And I was really conflicted, because one of my best friends, she got COVID when she was 24 weeks pregnant and was on a ventilator for 12 days and was within inches of death. And so
scary.
It was really scary. And all of our kids are best friends. Her oldest son is best friends with my oldest son. They had 4 children at the time she was pregnant. She was pregnant with her 4th, and all 4 of our kids align in age. And so we were both pregnant I was pregnant with my 5th. She was pregnant with her 4th. And I was juggling this in my head. I don't feel comfortable getting it in my first trimester, because everyone I know has a miscarriage when they get it in their first trimester. But I'm really scared about getting it when I'm pregnant, because she almost died. And so I ended up waiting. And I just secluded myself all of my first trimester. And I waited pretty far into my second. And I wasn't getting pressure, actually. My medical provider was not pressuring me in the least. And she was very open about the fact that she's like, it really could go either way. I understand why you would want it and why you wouldn't want it. And she never put her finger on the scale. And I deeply appreciate that. And respect her a great deal for so many other things, especially how she behaved during COVID, because she had colleagues that wouldn't even see patients in person. And when you're a medical provider, that's not like
important.
That's not okay. But I ended up getting it like towards the end of my second trimester. And oh, I wouldn't make that choice again, but it was such a hard
You
choice.
didn't know? Nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
Yeah,
It was
nobody knew.
such a hard time.
Well, that's actually not true. Apparently, they knew.
Yes,
We didn't know.
That's the thing. And so, I mean, I was saying this so much during the pandemic, like the amount of trust that you people are killing in the science, quote unquote, you don't get this back. Like I I'm frustrated with myself because I called BS on everything during COVID, like the masks and I had it all pegged, and I got canceled about it in May of 2020. There were family members that wouldn't see us because we weren't careful enough.
Yeah.
And I wish I had been red-pilled enough to distrust the shot as much as I distrusted everything else that came from the same people. I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Thank God, my son didn't pay for it with his life, but a lot of women, that's what happened. And I think it's important to give grace to those women, because
for sure,
they went through something horrible, and now 6 years later, 5.5 years later, they're thinking, oh my God.
I can't imagine reading that today, having had a miscarriage in that period. There has to be a class action lawsuit.
I feel like
can there be? Or no, it's a vaccine.
Yeah.
What can they do? Is there any recourse?
There's nothing. There's no recourse.
Even if it's public?
So, someone on the state level could sue Fauci. I was reading that today. Like on a state-by-state basis, they could like bring civil suits, basically. So I want to ask you this like piece of advice, and I'm curious your thoughts. I have a number of liberal friends who were like very bought into the pandemic and everything. Like they got like 1,600 boosters. And I have a girlfriend who did have a miscarriage right after she got the shot. And it was late. It was like 12 weeks. And I when she told me about it, I was like, oh, that was the shot. Do I say anything to her now? Like, I don't want to be like, dancing on the, like, I'm not an I told you so person at all, especially on something this horrifying.
Yeah.
But like, do I want to reach out and be like, this could be a mind mess for you right now. Like, hopefully you're okay, but I don't want to be seen as gloating, because that's a horrible thing I would never do.
Yeah.
Maybe she would resent. I don't know if I should say anything. I'm leaning towards no.
So you did talk to her at the time, and you said not to?
So I decided not to at the time.
Yeah.
I remember her telling me she got the shot, and I was like, oh girl, I wouldn't have done that. And then she had a miscarriage like 2 days later. And I never said anything. But now I'm thinking, like, what should I, like, to validate feelings that she might be having right now of like regret and sadness and anger? Maybe she's not having any of those. Maybe I'm reading into it too much. But like, should I reach out to her and say like, hey girl, thinking of you?
I guess it depends on how close you are with her. I probably would, if it's still someone I talk to, on a monthly, weekly basis. But if it's someone who's more on a peripheral, then probably not, if that's like the first time she's heard from me in 6 months.
Yeah. It's also like, it's such an interesting way that we all live our lives that she may not know this. Like,
that's
she
true.
Might live in an information ecosystem where she doesn't hear this.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing about
I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah.
Or it's already spun by the time it gets to her, and then she does resent you when you say something.
That's it. That's it. I remember I was talking to someone and they're like, why are they being so mean to Fauci? Like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, well, did you hear what he said? Did you hear what they uncovered?
Yeah.
Like, the journals were really, really damning.
Weird. Yeah.
And she's like, no, I didn't hear. I just heard that they were mean to him. And I was like, you should read about what he was writing.
Yeah.
But this is the ecosystems. This is the media ecosystems. The only thing she heard was that Rand Paul, he's a meanie. Like,
social media has been both the best and worst at the same time for public discourse. I mean, it's really great to break that fourth wall, but then at the same time, it's so easy, exactly what you're saying, to become so siloed in, your 4 or 5 organizations, which I know it's like a silly thing to say to get out and touch grass, but it is so important to have friends and acquaintances to the extent that they will still befriend you from different viewpoints, because otherwise, like, you don't hear it either.
Yep. Well, it's funny because like I live in Montgomery County, Maryland. It doesn't get more liberal than here. And I listen to NPR because I listen to the classical station a lot, which I recommend because it makes you feel like you're in a drama all the time. I'm like, something dramatic is going to happen right now because I'm listening to classical music while I'm driving. But as a result, I hear the NPR news breaks. And so I hear the other side very frequently. They never tune into Fox.
Never do. No.
They're never forced to like just sit through someone talking at them with conservative talking points. I mean, I think it makes our side much better because we hear it and they don't. And so they're
I think we're seeing that big time now on the blowback of all things woke, because they're having to defend things that they've never had to defend before. Yeah. And back to the WNBA, it's the perfect example. You know, you have these 2 or 3 men who have now said, okay, fine, then I declare my eligibility for the draft. Yes. And the WNBA has to call this emergency meeting because they've never been called on it. Yep. And they're like, oh no, now we have to actually define what a woman is. Yes. And, you know, here's Matt Walsh's movie.
I mean, Matt Walsh should try out for the WNBA, honestly. He would really probably kick butt. It would be so fun to watch Matt Walsh with his full beard.
It would be amazing.
And he would like, I think that he should like really go all in and like wear like a tight uniform and like, but full beard. Yeah. It'd be really fun. All right. I'm going to send this to Matt Walsh. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a lovely conversation, and I deeply resented I only had 7 minutes with you last week. So I'm so glad that we expanded this.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Where can folks follow all the work that you guys are doing? Because you just mentioned an email, for example, that I would like to be receiving personally.
Yes. So our website, AmericanParentsCoalition.org, that has all the links to our socials. But we also have this subscriber-based email list called The Lookout. And we will give you updates on kind of what's going on in the parenting world that are important, but also tools to deal with it in real time. So our organization is, you know, doing a lot of like the public advocacy side of it, but realize that it takes time for legislation to catch up to the parenting that we're doing like in real time in the real world. Mm-hmm. So every time that we identify a big problem, we try and also provide 4 or 5 things that you can do at home, whether that's write a letter or conversation starters with your kids, or, you know, talking points for you to use when you're having these conversations with your friends and neighbors. We try and always give you a little something to use as well, and not just scare you into thinking that we live in a hopeless world you have to opt out of.
Do I have to proactively sign up, or will you sign me up after we're done?
I could sign you up.
Thanks. Amazing. Thank you so much. Let's continue. Like whenever you guys do something else, this was amazing. I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Until next time, guys, don't forget to hit subscribe, leave us a review because it's been a while since we had one of those. And don't forget, saddle up.
Ricochet. Join the conversation.
Meanwhile, at MGM National Harbor, it all started with the perfect dinner at Voltaggio Brothers Steakhouse. Go ahead, dig into the celebrity chef menu. Then cue the legendary soundtrack at the theater with your favorite artist. The odds look good tonight when you step into the action of buzzing slots and thrilling table games. Find your escape at MGM National Harbor, where bold excitement meets unparalleled luxury. Plan your next visit at mgmnationalharbor.com. Must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800